Welcome to Ring Talk, episode number, Steve just told me, 158?
Yeah, 158.
58, ever the professional. The weekly Goodwin Boxing show with myself, Martin, Theobald, and Steve. How are you, Steve?
I'm very good. Better than you are with your dodgy knee, but
My dodgy knee that will require many weeks of healing, but there we go. It's all right. Life could always be worse. How are you keeping?
yeah, good. We're good. We've got 4 weeks of boxing coming up on the spin, and we've also got Bradpool's fighting for the British title in March. We've got some exciting fights coming in April and May. June says there's a lot going on. So lots of good stuff to come out. Obviously, some boys in title fights in March. Got a few in title fights, so it's going to be it's a very exciting month. Well, 3 months ahead, really.
Do you struggle to keep up on top of sort of where everybody is in terms of what dates they're on, or have you got it sort of all written? I've seen the whiteboards in the office. Is it still?
Yeah, and I've got a spreadsheet with it all interlinked, and every fighter's got a color chart, and we got it all. I mean, we know everything is run like military precision. So every fighter's plan is in my. I know exactly what we're doing. If we're going for titles, how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it, when we press the button, when we're not. It's there. It's written there, but everything's also in my head. I've got a phenomenal memory for everything, so I can remember every fighter's weight, every fighter where the record is, what they're aiming for, when we're going to do it, how we're going to do it. I just remember it all. But the actual dates of when they're fighting are all chronologically staged on a database, and we've got it all running like clockwork.
I can vouch for your slightly freaky memory. But yeah, no, I like the fact that boxing is underpinned by Excel because I'm a big Excel fan. I like that you've got like conditional formatting and little formulas going on, all sorts.
It's all good. No, it's all very it's run like clockwork. It really is. But yeah, so we're getting there, and every boxer's got a plan, and every boxer knows what we're up to, and we know in the early days of fighters, it's about. I always say to them all, you can get a fighter that's 1-0 and he'll want to have a meeting. It's just no point because all you're doing is building. You're playing by numbers at the start of your career. There is no rocket science to this. You have to build enough numbers to qualify for Southern area, and then you look and decide if you need more, if you want to get more numbers, or you find the right fight to press the button at whatever weight you're in. It's quite a simple process, but there's no reason to have a meeting about, oh, next time I'm going to fight Michael Mooney. I mean, just fight Michael Mooney. It's a bit like that. So it gets more. My job becomes a lot more involved with the boxers once they start moving towards the title situation. And then that's really when I do a lot more work.
I don't want to be rude to boxers here, but you've got to earn a meeting. And I mean that in the way that, and I'm sure all boxers will understand, when they go into their amateur gyms for the very first time being a child, they've got to earn that attention of the coach. The coach just doesn't come up and start sort of doing pads with them and getting them in sparring. They've got to prove their worth over a period of time, and then they get that coach's attention. That's the professional equivalent is do your rounds, do your sort of formative years, and you'll get those meetings. You'll get that time and that sort of one-to-one attention.
Because there is nothing genuinely when somebody's 2-0, there is nothing to discuss. There really isn't. I don't mind going and having a cup of coffee with somebody, and that's fine anytime. Any boxer's welcome to come in, have a cup of coffee and a chat. But you need to have a meeting when you're really trying to work out the navigation to titles.
And then coffee is not a career planning exercise.
No, it's just a hello and a catch up, a general catch up. So we do that often. But yeah, but a formal meeting for some really, like I'll take George Hennon, for example. Now, George Hennon is 9-2. He come unstuck in his English eliminator. So we're working a way to rebuild him to where we need to be. So we're in contact with discussions about how we're going to do, why we're going to do, why we're taking this fight, etc., 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 which we'll come on to when we talk about the 23rd. But that needs more attention than, say, who's fighting this week? Gian Ogres, who's having his third fight. Great prospect, but there's nothing to meet about just yet, if you follow me. We had a meeting when we signed him, but now you install you install the system, you play the system to get where you got to get to. It's just how it's done. So
Yeah.
that's how it is.
Yeah, you go through emotions to some degree at the beginning of your career.
Yeah, to get there.
Right. So this weekend you've got a show, and we're going to come on to that. But prior to that, we've got Sauerland's Wasserman show Friday night up in Telford. Telford's sort of become a bit of a boxing hotspot, hasn't it, over
Hmm.
the last 18 months, 24 months?
Strange location though for a Bas Baru against Sam Eggington, and then
Eggington's Midlands, isn't he? But
yeah, but then the main undercard fight is a Southern Area title being fought for in Telford.
yeah, I don't understand that. You got Midlands. Get a Midlands title on there.
But what I'm saying, it's a great fight, by the way. Well, come on, it's a great fight. So I understand why they want it. It's just weird that they're doing it in Telford.
Yeah, but credit to them. I think we'll come on to it, Agile, but credit to them for putting on, and hopefully it all gets sort of fully televised, an area title fight as a main support.
Because it's a really good area title fight as well. And they're better than some of this junk that we do watch sometimes, where you have the Mexican against, and he loses every round, 8 rounds to 0. And it's much better to have a title fight, whether it be English or Southern Area, much better, much better.
Yeah, I'm not going to run through that whole card because there's quite a lot on it, and frankly, I don't care about most of it. Sultan Zalbek though, like he came with sort of great fanfare, and now he's fighting on a Friday night in Telford. That's a strange career. But that main undercard one is Andre Descalu against Joe Jackson Brown.
I love that. I love that fight.
9-0, 7-0. Two quality fighters, super middle. That's a quality fight, isn't it?
It's a proper fight. Descalu is above average. Jackson Brown's had time out. I've seen him in the past. What you can see with that, it's going to be a proper fight. They both come forward. They both throw bombs. It's a proper fight. I'm really looking forward to that fight.
And Jackson Brown can whack, can't he?
So can Descalu.
Yeah.
It's a proper fight.
I don't know who I fancy for that, to be honest. I think it's a quality fight.
And you don't know where Joe Jackson Brown is because he hasn't been as active as Descalu, has he?
No, look, last fight was October last year, and then March last year, and then July 2017. So yeah, long career break.
So it's a long. When a boxer's that far out, you have to question when it gets in the trenches how much does he really want it when you've had that long a break from boxing. But we're only going to find that out on Friday. It may be that Descalu is too momentumed. He's the man of the moment, and he may, to win. But I think I'm hoping it'll be a really good fight, and I think well done to the Sauerlands for putting that on because that's TV worthy, that fight for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And then what is the main event? As you said, slightly oddly, Abbas Baru against Sam Eggington. Abbas Baru, German, sort of not particularly well known over on these shores, against Sam Eggington, who, I mean, you could drop him on the moon against an alien. He'll give you a fun fight. He might win, he might lose, but it doesn't matter. He's always going to do something that's entertaining.
It'd be a really good fight, and I guess what they've done is put a load of undercard fighters on to sell the tickets, I presume. So again, it's a really good fight. It's a good trade fight, and again, they're both fights that I'd like to watch. We were talking about whether you about certain fights, and because you say what you say about your view on the Taylor Catterall fight, doesn't make you a hater. It just gives you an opinion, right? And we've had this a lot lately with Eddie Hearn and Simon Jordan. Because Simon Jordan doesn't agree with Eddie calls him a hater. Just because you have a difference of opinion, it doesn't make you a hater. It just means you have a difference of opinion. And I don't see why you can't have a difference of opinion with somebody without being called something or labelled something. I think that's wrong. But I think going on to sidetracking, but going on to this fight, these two fights are really worth watching. And for me, Friday night, I'll be keen to watch the show. I know it's delayed and whatever, but I'll be watching it for sure.
Yeah,
worth watching.
That Taylor Catterall one. So the flip side of that is, I was watching earlier some of the press conference stuff for Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia over in America. Devin Haney, superbly talented, not the most exciting to watch. He's a Jack Catterall essentially.
Yeah.
But Ryan Garcia he's entertaining in every aspect of what he does. How he talks, you see him right up in Haney's face, giving it all that. How he presents himself, he gets in the ring and he can fight. He's entertaining to watch when he fights. I'm sort of invested more in that fight than I am Taylor Catterall, oddly.
Mm,
It shouldn't be because it's over the other side of the world, and I don't have any particular sort of attachment to either. But Ryan Garcia, just as a person, as a fighter, sort of intrigues me and entertains me. So
mm,
I have more interest in that than I would Taylor Catterall. But Haney does nothing for me. But one side of the fight can draw me in and get me interested. Uh,
I get that. I get it. I get that.
yeah. So no, it occurred to me earlier, really, when seeing those two going at it over press, and then you've got Bernard Hopkins and you've got Bill Haney sort of going at one another over the shoulders, and you've got Hearn winding up Garcia. All those things sort of played into it a bit for me. And I sort of thought, yeah, all right, I'm in for this. I fancy that.
Yeah, that'd be a good fight. Again, good fight to watch. We're getting some good fights at the moment. Being coming. I mean, boxing is in a good place. It's sort of a gift and a curse. In a good place and a bad place. It's a good place in that fights are getting made, but it's a bad place in how the fights are getting made. In terms of, we've had this in the past, going back the last few years, and still going on in certain cases, without going into anything, of how fights are being made, or the off-put. The fact they're being made is great, but people are not looking at how fights are being made and everything like that. So that's the negative. But I suppose if you're a boxing fan and you want to, like we are, you just blink at why these fights are happening and where it's all happening from and how. You just enjoy the boxing, I suppose. But I always sort of look at how and why these things are happening, whether it be on this side of the Atlantic or in the Middle East.
Yeah, and I always look, I always look at everyone who's involved and everyone who's pushing the story out on social media, whether they've got an involvement, an investment or not. And I think if you can start to tie it all together, then you start to see the story of why these things happen. But it's just me.
Yeah. So now we move on.
Now we move on. Yeah, this weekend, Goodwin Boxing show. What you'd call one of your development cards, I guess.
Totally and utterly a development card. You've got to have these cards because you're building up fighters. And basically, we just added one on, but of the other seven fights, or 13, 14, they've had 16 fights between them from 7 fights. 2 of them are debuts. It's a show like that for that reason, that it's just a development show. I'm not trying to sell to anybody that you're going to come down and see 50-50s. You're not. You're just not. It's not that type of show. There are other shows where we got that, especially the 23rd, the Boxmania show. But this isn't that. This is what it is on the tin. It's a development show. But if you're building fighters, these type of shows have to happen. We've got a show every weekend in March, or for the first 4 weekends in March. So they're going to be a mixture of different types of shows. So there's some exciting fighters on here, fighters that are worth seeing because of the talent that they've got and what can happen down the future. There's a few of these that could be very, very good in time. But that's what it is. It's just seeing people start their careers.
I always describe it as it's like farming, in that these are sort of the period for these fighters is that you're sort of planting seeds and seeing which ones you can harvest essentially in probably 2-3 years. But you don't get those Boxmania cards without first building the careers at that level. And ultimately, those Boxmania cards he put together and the 9th of March show as well are so stacked with really, really good fights, and the limitation of the number of fights you can put on one show now at York Hall, that you do need those developmental cards where it gives people the opportunity to build and build and build and aspire to one day being on the big ones. But
yeah,
it's like farming. You need to plant all those seeds to be able to harvest them at some point in the future.
Exactly that. And that's what we're working towards.
Yeah. So do you want to run through what's on this weekend?
Yeah, so let's start off with the most experienced fighter on the card. Ellis Stewart, 6-0. Now he's the one closest to, he's had a very busy start to his career. He takes on a guy called CJ Wood. He's Glenn Banks' kid. Now, this Wood does come to fight. He's a journeyman, but he's a journeyman that does come to try. And that should be quite an interesting fight for Ellis because he's developing and he wants to move towards title contention in the next 12 months. So he needs to take fighters that are going to give him pose different questions to him and come through them. And I'm looking forward to seeing this. He's trained by his dad, Terry. He's an excellent trainer. And I've got high hopes for Ellis. We just got to press the buttons with him at the right time. And we've got to remember, we didn't have a lot of amateur experience. So those with less amateur experience normally have more pro fights before you press the button, which is logical.
Yeah, and Ellis was a bit, I'm sure he won't mind me saying it, a bit underwhelming in his last fight, but there were reasons for that. He'd just become a new dad, and he,
of course,
in an ideal scenario, probably wouldn't have fought on that Saturday night, would have fought on another Saturday night. But
I agree, yeah.
It's an opportunity to put that right.
Exactly. So I'm sure he's going to be desperate to put on a really good performance. New signing of ours, Ibs Merkan, trained by Anton Paddington. He's moving down from cruiserweight to light heavyweight. He's on the way down the weights now. He's got Dylan Courtney. Dylan's always tough, always has a go. So Ibs is 4-0, and it's his first fight under our banner. And I'm expecting him to come through this and then move on to a fight in June, go to 6-0. And at that point, I think we'll then start looking.
That's when you have meetings.
That's when we have meetings. Yeah, get to that. That's exactly it. Because one more 5, one more 6, then I think we then really have to sit down and work out where we're going to strike, and that's the time when we really work through it all. But he's exciting talent, a really exciting talent who was a top amateur. Is Gian Ogus, who we've spoken about before. He's 2-0. He fights Kane Singh, who's from Glenbanks. He steps up to 6 rounds. Got real high hopes for him. He's with Josh Burnham. And I've got really, really high hopes. I think he's going to hit quite, heights. Southern area should be a formality. English, very probable, and then further. I think he's a talented kid, and I think there's a lot of big hopes for him. Ernest Wojcik, young Polish lad, he's 1-0. He's with Xavier Miller. He's having his second fight, takes on tough Stu Greener. Ernest, come forward, all action fighter, really exciting to watch. To be fair, he doesn't take a step back. He'll take a punch to give a punch. So that could actually be quite a good fight, to be fair, because Greener does try, and he's a tough man. Brandon Lewis, not mine. He's not a Goodwin Boxing fighter. He's also with Josh Burnham. He's managed by Josh, whereas I manage GN. He takes on Nathan Lee, and they're developing him forward. Charlie Cooper's an interesting one. He makes his debut for us. He was signed elsewhere, and he was he's a good amateur, Charlie. And he was signed elsewhere, but things weren't happening as they should do. I think his shows got cancelled a few times. He was one of them where fights were overscheduled and all that sort of nonsense that goes on. So he left where he was. He's come with us, and he's making his debut. So that'll be good to see. He's taken on Justin Menzies, who's always awkward and a difficult taste for everybody. And 2 late additions to the bill. Mo Pryor had a fighter called Taiwo Masuro, wanted to get on the show. So we always try and help other promoters if they're struggling to get their fighters out. So he's on. I don't know anything about him at all. He's fighting Edgar Sneers. And Ollie Edwards, he's not with us either. He's got a 6-rounder. So we've got those 2 to tidy up the bill at the bottom. So total of 8 fights. There's a couple of fun fights there, but I'm not going to try and sell it as a 50-50. It's a development. But there's definitely, I would say, 3 of those fights that could be quite fun fights, and they will be bringing a bit of a test to the homeboys.
So have you got something to do Saturday night? Come down, York Hall, see some of the next generation of talent.
Exactly, and that's what we're working towards. And so the 9th is the next one after this, and there's a few title fights on there, so that will be a little bit more. There's some more what I would consider to be more competitive fights and title fights next week, but this is really purely development. But some of these boys will be the ones in title fights end of this year, beginning of next.
But 2 takeaways from that card. 1, good on Glenn Banks, bringing a couple of his lads down.
Yeah, appreciate that. He's a good man. He is. He's one of the really good guys of boxing.
And 2, Justin Menzies. I just love that bloke. I was there when Justin was on the way up, and you know, he had a lot of troubles outside of the ring in terms of sort of sorting things out for himself. And yeah, he's so emotionally invested in boxing that I'm glad he can still find a place for himself in the sport.
He's a trainer now. He's got his first fighter out
Yeah.
on the 16th. So he's a boxer on the 2nd and a trainer on the 16th.
And do you know what? He's a handful for anyone, Justin. Like on his night, he's an absolute little buzzsaw of a bloke that, yeah, he's sort of, you know, if you got into it out on the streets, it's Justin who I'd want next to me. Yeah, he's that kind of bloke.
Yeah, no, he's a nice man. I like him. He's a nice man. We go back a long way with Justin, and no, he's a really nice fella. Really nice fella. And I hope, and I think he'll be a very, very successful trainer as well.
Yeah, good on him. Cool. Well, we'll leave it there, Steve. And we'll return next week to have a bit of a review of what's hopefully a fun little night on Saturday. And then we'll come on to the March 9th, 2 title fights upcoming, and we'll give that a bit of a preview.
Exactly. Sounds good. Thanks, Martin.
Real. Take care, everybody. Have a good week, and we'll catch you soon.